From the Outer Banks Voice, I'm Sam Walker. As part of our continuing election 2018 coverage, we've teamed with the Currituck Chamber of Commerce for a series of conversations with the candidates seeking the primary nominations from their individual parties in Currituck County. In this video, we'll talk with those seeking the Republican nomination for District 5 County Commissioner, incumbent Marion Gilbert, and challengers Owen Etheridge and Fred Whiteman. All right, Marion, if you'll give us an opening statement.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for the Chamber sponsoring and hosting this forum this evening, and the Outer Banks Voice for recording. Sam Walker, thank you very much. And the citizens of Currituck for taking this opportunity to listen to what we have to say this evening. I am Marion Gilbert, and I'm the current commissioner in District 5. My background, I have over 30 years of experience in human resources. Currently the Vice President of Human Resources for a maritime company in Chesapeake, Virginia. I have a certification from Old Dominion University in Human Resources. I have NAFC Six Sigma process improvement training, and also attended Chowan College, Chowan College in Murfreesboro, North Carolina, which is currently Chowan University. I've got 8 years on the Board of Commissioners and currently serving my second term. I am also the chairman of the Albemarle Commission, which is a 10-county board, and that's comprised of 10 counties with elected officials. I'm on the board of directors of the Currituck Kids. I'm in the vestry at St. Luke's Episcopal Church, and I look forward to serving you again. Thank you.
Owen?
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank all the parties that are involved, the Chamber, Sam Walker, and the Outer Banks Voice on making this video presentation possible. Remember, elections are about choices, and choices based on who is the best candidate to fill the needs of the office of the Board of Commissioners. I have 16 years experience as a commissioner, but I won't rest on my laurels as a former commissioner because I have developed a vision for where I would like to see the county go in the future. That's very important, that we be inclusive of all citizens of the county by listening respectfully to them and doing the things that we can to enact the things that they say they want and need. Keeping in mind how we pay for it and when we pay for it and what is the best use of the tax dollars you, the citizens, work so hard to pay, and you expect it to be spent wisely. I look forward to discussing with my two friends here the opportunities that are being presented to us in questions tonight to present ourselves in a way that you will find informative and you can help make the best choice for the citizens of Currituck County. Thank you.
Fred?
Thanks, Sam. Good evening. I'd like to thank Sam for taking the time to do this video. My name is Fred Whiteman. I am a 24-year Navy retiree. My wife and I moved here 15 years ago, and we have 3 children. I have been the chairman of the Moyock Small Area Plan, and I'm currently serving as the chairman of the Currituck County Planning Board. The reason I got into this, for the past 8 to 10 years, I've been following the direction of the county commissioners, and I just don't like the direction it's going. There are a lot of communication issues that I'm concerned about, in addition to all of the lawsuits, and I wanted to get involved to be able to do something to help stop all of this and to better communicate with the citizens of Currituck County. Thank you.
Fred, I want to start with you. Residential growth, and you obviously with your experience in Currituck's planning department, on the planning board, et cetera, as you just mentioned, how do you feel like residential growth, where we are today and where we're going to be 4 years from now, how do you feel we can balance the new with the old, with those of us who grew up here and have seen Currituck expand over the last 20 years? How do you feel like that you as a county commissioner could find that balance between the new and old here at Currituck?
So when we were on the Moyock Small Area Planning Committee, that was one of the biggest concerns we had. There was about 60% of the folks that came to the committee meetings who wanted growth, and the other 40%, like you said, are local who wanted to remain rural. So we had to put together the plan to help benefit the most folks involved. I think with the way the direction the county's going right now, we have developers paying for infrastructure in a lot of cases, which we probably shouldn't be doing. The county needs to look at developing the infrastructure and not letting the growth overtake the infrastructure. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now. We've got entirely too much growth, and we need to slow down a little bit and take a look at the infrastructure and make sure we're not overwhelming our infrastructure.
Owen, you've seen it grow from what we all, as me, a generation ahead of me, have seen Currituck transition greatly and poorly over these last decades, and you have been through it at different levels. Describe what you think you can bring back to the board if you were elected to find that balance between the new and the old.
Well, Sam, that's an excellent question, and one that has been asked for many years, as you stated. When I first started serving Currituck County was back in 1982 on the planning board. And I served as chairman of the planning board for 8 years, and then was elected to the office of commissioners in 1994. When I was elected as a county commissioner, the first thing that we did, the new board, was we increased lot sizes to cut down on density. It was very important to try to get a handle on the growth of the county. We were facing the similar problems then that the county is facing today. Infrastructure, as Fred mentioned, infrastructure includes schools, it includes county facilities, it includes those things that are necessary for the quality of life that we enjoy here in Currituck. So it's very important. I've heard it been said many times, we have the come heres and the been heres. And it's very important that we bring them all together, and we're here as Currituck people, not someone that moved here or someone that was born here. We all came here for the same reason, or stayed here for the same reason, because we love Currituck County. And I have that passion for Currituck County that I've had all my life. I could have gone anywhere in this world or this country, but I decided to come back to Currituck, join the family farm, and work every day to try to improve the quality of life, not only for my family, but for the families of Currituck County.
Marion, in a previous video, we talked to Mike Hall and Kevin McCord, and they brought up something that's very interesting. You've been on the board for 8 years, and you had decisions that had to be made over these last 8 years. But in some of those decisions, you were hamstrung because of things that had been done previously. How do you feel like over the next 4 years you could continue to balance the new and the old with the fact that you do have things that are on the books and ordinances and stuff that you have to follow? How do you feel like over the next 4 years you could find that balance?
Well, Sam, that's an excellent point. And currently, the board, we established the Moyock Small Area Plan so that we could strategically increase or monitor the growth of the development in the Moyock area. But we've also done small area planning in the different parts of the county. We have not completed the lower end, but currently that is something that, in fact, the Shingle Landing development on Moyock Crossing was a prime example of the ordinances that we updated from the 2006 plan to incorporate strategic growth. Growth is inevitable. Rooftops are necessary to support economic development. So with that being said, we've got to continue the path that we're on. When I came on the board, thankfully, to the commissioners prior to me, allowed me to inherit about 2,000 lots that were already planned and platted, that I had, my hands were tied. They had already been zoned, planned, and ready for development. And those developments were already planned out prior to my being on the board. So with the applicant approving their 4 points, I had no choice but to approve those developments.
Quality of life issues, preserving quality of life in Currituck are all related to this. Whether it's, as you said, rooftops, more rooftops supporting economic development, but at the same time, maybe rooftops overstretching quality of life and everything. How do you feel the next 4 years as commissioner you could find, as we just said, balance, but continue to preserve the quality of life that people expect to move to Currituck or have lived in Currituck all their lives? How do you feel like you could find a way to preserve that quality of life?
Well, currently with the ordinances that we have in place, the flooding and stormwater runoff is a big topic when developments come in. So with the ordinances that we have in place now, that allows us to contain the runoff and have the developers develop these properties in a way that the stormwater and the flooding isn't inspected as much. Currently been in conversations and had the Army Corps of Engineer come in and do a study so that we can determine where that flow is coming from. So that is one of the biggest topics when we have development is, you know, my neighborhood is going to flood. So we've attacked that and tried to resolve that issue.
Fred, preserving quality of life, but at the same time, as Marion just brought up, flooding is a very key issue. How do you feel that if being elected commissioner, with your experience that you've learned with the planning board, bringing that to the Board of Commissioners, how do you feel like you can make changes to preserve quality of life as we know it here?
Sure. So a couple of things with the flooding. In our neighborhood, Eagle Creek, I'm sure that most of the folks out there know that Eagle Creek floods nearly every time it rains. We have fought for the last 8 to 10 years with the county to try to get some folks out there to help us with some of the drainage issues. We weren't getting anywhere, so what we did was we created a plan where we went through step by step the entire neighborhood. We mapped out the choke points. We hired a company to come in and clear all those out, and the drainage in our neighborhood has never been better, even when from the beginning of the neighborhood. So I think if we do that on a grander scale for the entire county, it would improve drainage to the entire county. And we have taken the first steps by hiring one of the local colleges to do a survey. And I've been to several of the meetings, and it looks like they're getting some very good input on the flooding, the choke points in the county. And I think that's the first step in fixing this. And I think if they follow the same plan that we designed for Eagle Creek, they could resolve a lot of the issues in the county.
Oh, and you as a commissioner, but also as your experience in a farming family in Currituck, and drainage is a very key point of that. How do you feel like you as a commissioner could help in preserving quality of life here in Currituck, but flooding and drainage is a big issue that's part of that?
Well, you know, we can dig all the ditches out, widen them and whatnot in the subdivisions and the drainage ditches that go to the various outlets that end up in Currituck Sound or Tulls Bay. Until we can get camera, and this is where we must enlist the help of our state representatives in allowing us to go into like Moyock Creek, Shingle Landing, Guinea Mill Canal, and places like that, and snag and clean those historical drainage points out. All we're going to do is cause water to back up. We're just going to move it a little bit and make it a little easier to get off. But I think we also have to look at, when we talk about drainage in these subdivisions, what do we have in our ordinances that might be causing some of this excess flooding that we're seeing? Curb and guttering is great, but yet we create a conduit, a concrete conduit for drainage water to run off quicker. And we also should look at, when we develop shopping centers and also driveways, that we look at ways that we can create drainage points in those things by using porous concrete surfaces or blocks, paving stones, so that some of that water can go into the ground naturally and stay there instead of just immediately being shunted off into the drainage canals. Believe me, I've fought drainage all my life as a farmer, and we've dug ditches, but you have to be able to get that water out of those ditches and get it away from here. With the understanding that tides do affect our drainage to some degree, and some of the major flooding that we've had in Currituck in the last few years has been greatly impacted by the tides.
The north end of the county, the south end of the county have their differences, economically, socially. We're 40 miles long. Owen, you've seen how much things have changed in this end of the county, the north end of the county. The south end of the county seems to finally have an opportunity to catch up. How does you, a commissioner, over the next 4 years feel like you could make changes or to facilitate where both ends of the county and the center of the county all can have the same economic and socioeconomic opportunities?
Well, the first thing that I would do when elected is put the Economic Development Board back to work. It is my understanding they've not had a meeting in over a year. And if we do that and charge them with the responsibility of dealing with our mom and pop existing businesses in Currituck County to help strengthen them and grow them and build our economy from within, instead of always out here elephant hunting, looking for the major big box retailer or smokestack industry to come in Currituck, I think we'd be doing a lot better in terms of helping to bridge that economic development gap. Second thing we have to do, I think, is reevaluate our ordinances and get the foot of government off the throat of businesses. I hear constantly, and I've heard it for years, that Currituck County is one of the toughest, if not the toughest place to try to start a business in. I know someone right now that's looking to put a business in Currituck County, a good business. But yet he's being told that he's only got 1 or 2 places in Currituck County that he can locate that business in. And it's a body shop. So we have to look at our ordinances. It's nice to write ordinances, and I've helped write my fair share of them. But we always have to look at the impacts, the secondary impacts of those ordinances and what they're doing down the road. And I think we lose sight of that sometimes.
Marion, over the next 4 years, how do you feel like you can make changes, developing it to get that balance between the north end and the south end half of the county? Say north end and south end, northern half and southern half of the counties. How do you feel like you could get that balance over the next 4 years?
Well, I'd like to continue on the path that I'm on. Just recently I went to DC and met with the Intergovernment Affairs and had a conversation with statewide county commissioners, and we brought our issues from local to the federal government and spoke with Vice President Pence, Ben Carson, and a couple of the top department heads. So I have one-on-one conversations and able to reach out to those persons. Currently, one of the big issues, as Mr. Etheridge brought up, is the drainage and the dredging and the sound. Currently, we are making strides. After 17 years of being told no by the Army Corps of Engineers, we are finally getting someone to listen to us about dredging the Wellhead Club. And that's one of the things that I am very proud that I've had a part of, and we are making forward motions to make that happen. As far as the economic development, as a board member, I have tried to support local businesses and up and down the county, not just in the Moyock area, but throughout the county, Knox Island, the Outer Banks. And with the economic development director that we have now in Larry Lombardo, he's doing a superb job. He has lots of resources, and I really see our economic development progressing in a positive manner in his leadership, under his leadership.
Fred, finding that balance, and all 3 of you are running for a district that covers the north end of the county, but you're elected by every member, voting member in all of Currituck, so that's why this is an important topic. How do you see trying to find that balance between Moyock, between Coinjock, and between Powell's Point? How do you feel like you could maybe bring more of that equalization if you were elected commissioner?
So one of the issues that we have, I mean, we've got the Moyock mega site, which has been planned by the county. I think that's kind of an issue that I have. They're sort of picking the winners and losers with the property. You know, if you're told you're the property owner that has the open space, your property's not really worth anything, but if you're high density, your property's worth more. What Currituck needs to do is they need to start going out and purchasing land themselves for parks and for other things. You've got the YMCA down in the mid-county, you've got everything else that draws people down to the mid-county, but where do people go? People drive right by the north end of the county and go to Virginia. They don't go to the mid-county. They go right through Moyock and they go right up to Virginia. If there were more facilities, if there were more things for the kids to do, playgrounds, more things that people could do right here in the north end of the county, that would help out as far as balancing that. The south end of the county as well. I mean, one of the things they talk about in the south end of the county, I've talked to many of the developers down there, they don't like the fact that They were promised water and sewage years and years ago, decades ago, and they still don't have it. They can't develop their properties. Again, the county's picking winners and losers. You guys can only develop low density, you can't develop high density. And I think that needs to stop. The county needs to stop picking the winners and losers.
Well, let's get to something that's kind of related to that, which is housing in Currituck County. The term affordable housing can be a wide range of subjects. In Currituck, it seems that we have large single-family homes, we have neighborhoods of manufactured housing. We don't have anything in the middle. It's a big issue in Dare County, and Dare County pretty much is looking like, hey, looking at Currituck. What's Currituck going to do for us to have affordable housing, townhouses, condominiums?
Sure.
How do you feel, Fred, that Currituck could become that destination for people who are looking for somewhere, and I say a destination, but people who live in Currituck may be looking for something they can actually afford, a townhouse, a condominium, but at the same time trying to balance that with people who say, well, not in my backyard.
That's an excellent point, the not in my backyard folks. When we did the Moyock Small Area Plan, and since I've been on the planning board, that's what I get a lot of, not in my backyard, we don't want to build that. But you've got developers like Sam Miller, you've got Elon Vacations. If you've ever been down to Elon, they've built these gorgeous, gorgeous condominiums. They're kind of upscale condominiums, townhomes, whatever you want to call them, granite countertops, gorgeous floors. And they're very, very affordable, 2 and 3 bedroom places. Sam Miller is developing some places over here. They're gorgeous places, and they're not what you would consider affordable housing in most areas. They're places that are affordable, yet they're very high end, and they look very, very nice. What we need to do is start depending on more and more builders like that to be able to build those places for us. Once we get the community to buy in, once we get them to look at some of these other places and say, this is what we're talking about. We're not talking about the really low income housing. We're talking about affordable housing that looks like this. And we show them the examples. I think we're going to get more buy-in from the folks, and we're going to be able to build more of those in this area.
Marion, how do you feel like the commissioners have addressed this affordable housing topic as you've been on the board, and how do you feel like you could continue to address that over the next 4 years?
Well, Sam, that is an excellent question. For 8 years, I've been asking to define affordable housing, and the response that I get is, if you move to Currituck County, your taxes are low, so it makes it affordable. In my eyes, transplant from Chesapeake, affordable housing is HUD housing and disadvantaged housing. I don't want to see that come to Currituck, because certainly we have a need for affordable housing, but to define that dollar threshold is tough. Just recently we had the Dare County Chamber come and speak with us during a work session on affordable housing, and I posed that same question because we have, as you alluded to, Sam, folks coming from Dare County wanting to move into Currituck for affordable housing. We do have a few condominiums. We've got some at the south end of the county, and the planned development for Currituck Station will include apartments and condominiums. I spoke with a developer just recently that is planning a PUD development, which includes townhomes, condominiums, and single-family homes. Through the years being on the board, we have updated the ordinances so that we can transition from 10-acre lots to comparable lots, so that we have that transition from development to development, which allows us to have a little less density backing up to larger densities.
Owen, my generation has a lot of people who grew up in Currituck and then left because they couldn't afford to live here. Some have said that. You talked about expanding the size of lots when you were on the board before. How do you feel like trying to find that balance, a balance to have affordable housing so that the next generation of Currituckians are willing to stay in Currituck because they can still afford to live here?
Well, Sam, excuse me, I served on the North Carolina Legislature Smart Growth Study Commission back in the late 90s, early 2000. And we went around the state to different places and looked at what they were doing to address this very issue. One of the more prestigious areas we went to was Land's End down in Wilmington. And there they had mixed-use development. You had the commercial properties to service that development. You had the high-end homes. You had a certain percentage of them say, middle income America, where kids are in school, and then you had the beginners section or lower cost homes. And it was a transition period through there where people could move up as their housing needs changed and stay in the same community. I hear people say all the time they would like to stay where they are, but there's nothing there for them. There is an economic incentive for the developer to do that because he can meet all the different segments of the marketplace. But the other thing that we have to be very careful of, and it goes back to something Fred said, is the infrastructure. I have no problem in having the developer put the infrastructure in as long as they meet the state standards and the county standards to put that infrastructure in. That's the cost of doing business, and they will put that price into the cost of the homes that they have. So it's important that the county don't have to foot the bill for all of this. And we'll find out who really wants to be a part of the Currituck community by keeping that in place and making sure that all this infrastructure is put in at no cost to the current citizens, because it's got to be paid for one way or the other. You either go back to the property tax and do it that way, or you let the developer put it in and let the ones that are using the service pay for it.
We're going to focus on one more question. It's kind of a county-wide question. We're going to have a specific Moyock question. But first, a county-wide question, and that is Corolla, because Corolla has such an impact on the county as a whole. And with the nature of the last couple of nor'easters this winter, we've seen the success, or some would say lack of success, with beach nourishment in Dare County. But it's obvious that Corolla may have to eventually be nourished, and that's going to be something over the next 4 years. How, Owen, we're going to start with you. How do you feel like over the next 4 years as a commissioner, would your focus, if the residents of Corolla, the property owners of Corolla, come to you and say, we need beach nourishment, decide to say you need beach nourishment to keep the beach accessible and keep the beach viable, how do you feel like the best way to go about this is?
Well, the first thing that we have to determine is, as you said, is it needed? And that will be dependent on what the coastal experts tell us. And also some common sense, because we can see the beach wash out on a nor'easter today, and in 3 weeks it's back. So we have to look at the natural occurring cycles of the beach. And I think the Corps of Engineers has done extensive studies at the Duck Research Pier on how the beach changes and evolves. The second thing is, how do we pay for it? And I've heard talk about using the occupancy tax. Well, what services are we going to take away from the current expenditures of the occupancy tax in order to pay for it? And will they suffer? Because the occupancy tax is used to attract tourists, build infrastructure for tourists, and that doesn't mean just at Corolla. That means on the mainland, because we have to handle the influx of tourists as they go through Currituck County. So we have to look at additional law enforcement, we look at additional EMS and things of that nature. And the third thing, is it a long-term solution to the issue? Is what they're posing, will that really solve the problem, or is this going to be an ongoing, reoccurring expense over the years?
Marion, you're 8 years on the board, you've seen it, you know, what Dare County's done, and Owen brings up a good point about the occupancy tax, because that's how Dare County's funded it. They increased their occupancy tax, putting aside a portion of it. Then, of course, the individual towns and the counties impose tax districts. But overall, beach nourishment, has that been a topic that's come up? And if so, or if not, do you feel like it's something that needs to come up, and how would you address it over the next 4 years?
Well, Sam, within the last month, we've had a workshop on beach nourishment, and this workshop was very educational for me. I work in a dredging business now, but learning the aspects of how the flow of water onto the beach, off to the beach, as Mr. Etheridge alluded to, that depending on the winds and the storms, it brings the sand back on the beach, and then in one quick swoop, it's off the beach again. But we are looking at that. I don't think that just bringing in sand is going to work. We need to look at doing some structures off the shore because of the way that the winds and the tides approach our beaches to actually nourish them. So we are in a process right now. We've had some preliminary figures as far as cost. It is a very costly process, but I certainly encourage and support it. When I ran 8 years ago, the first forum that we had in Corolla, that was one of the first questions that I was asked, is if I supported beach nourishment. And that is probably one of the #1 things that we need to look at this time. And in our budget, we will look at the way that we can pay for those, for the encroachment, sorry, to pay for those services to enrich the beaches.
Fred, your thoughts on how Currituck can approach beach nourishment? And it's something, as Marion said, it's been discussed. Corolla residents ask about it all the time. How do you feel about that?
The most difficult part of this is going last with this question, because although they have some really great ideas, I'd like to respectfully disagree with Owen. As far as using occupancy tax for it, I would consider the beach access infrastructure. I mean, it's what provides them a path to their homes, to the businesses, to the tourists, and I would consider that part of the infrastructure, and occupancy tax should be used for infrastructure. Anybody who benefits from the beach access, the businesses, the rental properties, they should all, just like Owen said, if we're making the developers pay for infrastructure, then those who are benefiting from that infrastructure should be paying for it. So I think that if we do increase the occupancy tax, Marion said it's going to be very expensive, and there are a lot of things we're going to have to do to help it long term, but I don't think that it's something that the rest of the county should be paying for. I think it's something that the occupancy tax should be paying for.
Let's move on now to a very Moyock specific question. Everyone talks about what was originally dubbed the Moyock mega site. And let's just flat out ask, support or opposed? Fred?
I think the way that they're doing it, I'm absolutely opposed to it. I think it's a great idea. I think we've spent entirely too much money researching it. You've got a lot of landowners that just don't support it and will not sell their land. You've got some landowners, like I said earlier, who have been chosen to be the losers in this whole process. Their land has been designated as open area. Those people are not going to get any money for their land. The folks that have been chosen to be the ones that get high density, they're going to get the most money for their property. I don't think it's a great way to go about doing things. I do think it's a good idea to find a way to develop that, but I think we're going about it the wrong way. I think we need to get landowners and developers in the same room and to discuss a way forward, and we're not doing that right now. Some of those landowners have never even been approached. So I think we need to get them all in the same room and start discussing it.
Owen?
I agree with Fred. I don't support the idea as it is today. First thing I think they did not do correctly was they should have approached the landowners involved in the plan to begin with first, to see where the interest is in terms of the mega site plan. Once they got, say, 80–90% of the landowners involved, then go forward in planning. It's amazing when I look at the plan as it was presented here at the elementary school, that it is so similar to the theater district that was created back about 2004 for the Randy Parton Theater. We were looking at building a complete mega site. That was 2,500 acres, I think. Entertainment and shops and things of that nature. This mega site plan is very similar in terms of the same area and whatnot, and it was performed by the same engineering firm. So they've double dipped on this same parcel of land now twice. As I told the economic developer, this will never work unless you can get everybody in agreement. And the only way you could ever do that is have one mega developer come in and buy everything and give everybody the same price.
That's right.
Because the first time you have one landowner tell the other one, well, I got $10,000 an acre for mine, well, I got $20,000 for mine, the deal's off. It's not going to work, because it's got to be fair to everybody involved. Fred said picking winners and losers. And I totally agree, that is wrong. The county should not be in that business.
Marion?
Well, I will tell you that thankfully to the folks like Mr. Whiteman and Mr. Hall who served on the Moyock Small Area Plan, designated the properties within the Moyock district on where this type of development could be developed. And that was a key piece that was identified as a place that a mega site, which I don't like that terminology, but we've come up with Currituck Station to be more of a welcoming and something of the gates of coming into Currituck to provide economic development, some affordable housing, some condominiums, townhouses, single-family homes, businesses, to bring some smaller businesses. This isn't a property that will come in for large box stores, but according to the Moyock Small Area Plan, that was a prime property, and with developers approaching the county and asking for the best place to develop, that was the property that was suggested. I will say that this is not something that's going to happen overnight. I don't even know that I will still be alive when it completely is constructed. So it's very preliminary, and as you've heard my opponent speak, that the land has not been purchased, contracts have not been signed. So this is something that, again, is long-term. This is not something that's going to happen quickly. I do want to add, though, that currently the Department of Transportation is working on road improvements down South Mills Road, and with that we are looking at and entertaining putting some water infrastructure in, because it's less expensive to do it while the roads are already torn up, and they're putting other utilities in. So we are looking at a project of installing water lines during that, and then looping it into where that property that's been designated as the Currituck Station will take place.
Closing statements from each of you. We'll start with Mr. Whiteman.
It's no secret that I just do not like the direction the county's going with regard to these lawsuits. Last week we had a binding arbitration for $17 million. On the 17th of this month, we're going to have another one for $57 million, the Chip Freeman lawsuit. If you look at all of the lawsuits, we're in excess of $100 million. And most of these lawsuits could have been handled at a much lower level than they're at right now. I think that the county could do much, much better dealing with this. Right now, per capita, Currituck County has the highest number of lawsuits in the state of North Carolina. You'll hear some of the folks on the commission say that, you know, the lawsuits are part of doing business in the counties. Every county has lawsuits. No county per capita has as many lawsuits as we have in Currituck County. The other issue, as far as communication, most of the issues I've heard throughout this campaign is that the folks, the voters, don't get to communicate with the commissioners. When they call, they don't get their phone calls returned. I think that's a major issue. As someone who's been the president of the largest community in the North End for going on 8 years now, or various president, vice president, you can ask anyone, they'll call me 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'll return their calls. Two other quick issues I touched on earlier. I think that we need to do more for the children up in the North End as far as parks and recreation. We've got a lot of stuff that the kids can't use right now because it's at the schools. I think if we build parks separate from the schools, we can accommodate those children as well.
Owen?
This evening you've heard the views of the 3 candidates for the Moyock District 5 seat. I want to touch on something Fred said, and that's the lawsuits. My name is on the lawsuit concerning Chip Freeman and Freeman Associates. I did everything I could before that lawsuit ever came forward and pleaded with the Board of Commissioners, let's settle this thing. Because the Freedmans had, in my belief, based on what attorneys had told me, vested rights to develop that plan. And that's where I stood. I've been part of a lot of lawsuits, but we always went into our lawsuits when I was on the board based on good advice from attorneys. And we never lost a lawsuit except one, and that was one when we sued the governor. over the airport property, but we ended up winning that in the long term because we ended up with the property out there where we've got now the YMCA, the Cooperative Extension Service, and the industrial site that's now being developed. But folks, I have experience. I served 16 years and never raised taxes in this county. In fact, the boards I served on, we cut taxes 3 different times. So I know how to do it. I know how to say no. In 2006 and 7, as Ms. Gilbert said, there was a lot of rezonings done. 3,000 acres were rezoned in Currituck County, more than at every time in Currituck County's history. Accumulated all the rezonings, the residential, and that's what they're dealing with now. I think it's time maybe to approach some of that empty land that was rezoned to residential about downzoning, or at least changing the tax structure to reflect that it's residential property. But I've heard that, well, you're a career politician. I am not a career politician. I've been a public servant my entire time in the Board of Commissioners. You can check my record. I would be graded as excellent if you could grade on constituent service and returning phone calls and being responsive. I think it's time to bring the government back to the people instead of bringing the people to the government. If we do that and we work together, the job of a county commissioner of improving and enhancing the quality of life would be greatly accelerated, and we'll all be better off in the end run.
Marion?
First and foremost, I want to thank the citizens of Currituck for trusting me as their commissioner for the last 8 years. Being a new person moving to the county in 2007, within 2 years I ran and became a county commissioner, and I spent the first 4 years on the board as a learning experience because I had to learn North Carolina government, but I jumped in with both feet from the beginning to really help move the county forward. The past 4 years, including this year, I feel very proud of the accomplishments that I've been a part of with the development in the Maple area, with the small area plan in Moyock, with the infrastructure and the businesses that have been built and opened in the southern part of the county, the issues that we've had with the roads in the Knott's Island area, with the development and the issues that we've had on our northern beach, and also the infrastructure and the recreation facilities that we put into Corolla. We are currently in a site development for a Moyock Park, which I would invite anyone and everyone to come out on the 17th of April to the Moyock Middle School at 7 p.m. There's going to be a topic on a lot of the items that are going on in the Moyock area, but I would just ask for your vote on May 8th to continue the work that I'm doing. Again, thank you to the citizens. You have a current commissioner, so I'm representing the present. You have our past commissioner, and you have someone that is serving on the planning board now that in that capacity could learn a whole lot more and be a future commissioner. But at the present time, I would ask for your support on May 8th to go forward and bring the county in the positive direction that we are on at the current. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.